Welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stared. Stats Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. We have made it to week 8 of the college football season. And I mean, what another big week we have. Two amazing matchups in the SEC, Tyler. It is one of those, not a giant week when you think of one of those weeks where there's 5 giant matchups you have to keep an eye on. But anytime you've got 2 really great games, one a giant rivalry, one a major matchup in the top 5, always a fun week. Never a dull week in this sport.
No, I do enjoy NFL football, but I can totally see the case why there's some people that say, I could do without the pros. Just give me college.
But either way, folks, before we get into this one, as always, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to stay notified when all new videos come out. And as always, leave a comment down below. Tell us what you agree with, disagree with, what your predictions are for this week. Even if your game isn't mentioned, always feel free to drop a prediction for whatever game. You want to talk FCS, D2, D3, list it. I don't care. I don't think Tyler would mind. It's always good to learn about everybody else. But Tyler, we've got to get right into it because there's a massive game in Austin, Texas this Saturday night. Number 5, Georgia. Number 1, Texas. Horns 3.5-point favorites right now. And this is one of those interesting games because I was looking at it earlier today and I was trying to think, when is the last time Texas had a game of this magnitude at home where it's a top 5 matchup, all the pressure is there to perform and really show who you are on a national stage like this. And I couldn't really think of one for a little bit because, I am a young man. And so the last one I could come up with was, if you may not even remember this was 2006. Ohio State was number 1 in the country. Texas was number 2. Listen, Tyler, you never know. You never know.
Come on now.
I always have to forget you're a little bit older than I am, but it's one of those just monumental game for Texas. I mean, it's weird to think about it in the perspective of this, that it's a giant game for Georgia as well, obviously. They're 5-1. Another loss puts you way behind the 8 ball of where you thought you'd be this year. Colors with the college football playoff expanded to 12. That doesn't really mean as much. You're still more than likely going to get a playoff spot with some of the road down the head, though, or teams down the road for Georgia, I should say, however. This feels like a must-win game for them almost. It feels like you really need to put your foot down here and show, we are Georgia. We had that blemish at Alabama, but we're still going to come back and show you who you are. You have that. That's a big game to show that you're battle-tested. But Texas is as well, and not against the same level of competition, but in who you've played. You've played Michigan. You've played Oklahoma. Yes, you've gotten the benefit of the doubt that neither of those teams know what offense is this year, but you've done what you're supposed to do when you play a team like that. You have shut them down and nearly dismantled them when it comes to your defense versus their offense. This should be an amazing game, to say the absolute least.
Cade, I don't know what I'm more afraid of. The Georgia fan base, if they get the win, saying, see, we didn't go anywhere. Or if Texas gets a win, saying, see, we are legit. I don't know if I want to deal with either one of those. But regardless, what a game. And I think if we're just talking for who needs it more, I really do think it is Texas, because we know Kirby Smart can lead a squad, right? We know Georgia is legit in a sense, and venture with me in this world. Georgia winds up, let's say, losing this game, right? They finish out the regular season undefeated from that point. You finish 10-2, not in the SEC title game, but your only losses would be to Alabama and Texas, who might also be playoff teams themselves. So I don't think Georgia needs it as much as people may think, because I think a 2-loss Georgia team, especially if those are Alabama, Texas.
Well, seems like we lost you there for a moment. But I get what you're saying. The, Georgia.
If they're in their
there you go. There, you're back. Oh, did we lose you again? Did we get you back for a moment just to lose you? My goodness.
Anyways.
There we go.
I was basically saying that for Georgia. Okay. Okay. Anyways, I was saying for Georgia, I don't think they need this as much as people think. I know it would hurt the confidence, but a 10-2 Georgia team with losses to Texas and Alabama probably still makes playoffs regardless of, if they're in their conference championship or not. For Texas, I think this would be huge in terms of the confidence, right? To say, hey, we are who we really think we are. Because you mentioned it, they have beat Michigan and Oklahoma, but two teams in Michigan and Oklahoma that seemingly were not playing with a full deck in terms of their offense. So you could go beat a Georgia. That is probably your biggest statement you could make in the season, especially at this point.
Absolutely. And for Texas, I agree with you. I think that it feels weird to say, but when you're number one in the country, all the pressure's on you to perform. And they have every
Yeah.
single game this year. There's no knock on Texas really with what they've done this year. But the matchup I'm most interested to see in this game, Tyler, I had to think about this a little bit. Not too hard because it's pretty obvious. Texas is secondary. They have the number 2 passing defense in America. Number 1 in the SEC. Washington is technically number 1. Texas number 2. About a difference of 3 or 4 yards there. How does Georgia's offense attack that? Like we said, Texas hasn't played a whole lot of high-powered offenses. Michigan, you don't really think of it this year. Oklahoma, not really. This is going to be that big test for Texas's defense. They've been solid all year. They've performed great. Can they handle what Georgia's going to throw at them? Carson Beck, he just had a fantastic game in terms of just pure slinging it, throwing for over 450 against a not good Mississippi State team, but it doesn't matter. 450 is 450. It doesn't matter who you're playing. That's always going to be impressive. The other thing I'm looking for is really on Georgia. And I don't know if you'll agree with me 100% on this or not, but, look at the last 5 here, if you will, on ESPN, that I've got pulled up on the screen. You look at 4 of those. Yes, we're going back a month. Kentucky, that was a weird game. You hold on, you get bully balled a little bit. Alabama, dominated in the first half, come back, take the lead. Alabama holds on. Auburn, that's a game that you were in control of for the most part. You never really put it away until late third quarter, mid fourth, somewhere in between there. You never felt like you were going to lose that game, but the scoreboard didn't indicate the vibes, basically. And the same thing with Mississippi State. That's a game where Georgia had Mississippi State pinned. It's 34-10. You let Mississippi State back into it a little bit, and again, it's one you didn't think you were going to lose. You didn't feel, oh no, we're in trouble. It's 34-24. Mississippi State's coming back. But when you look at it, you go, well, this could have been a game. You change one drive, and we're looking at a completely different ball game here. And granted, Georgia take care of business. They did exactly what you're supposed to do. But Georgia cannot come out and have a dull moment. They cannot have a slow start. They cannot have a series of drives, 2 or 3 in a row, where they just absolutely sputter around. Because Texas, at home in Austin, where they haven't seen a game like this in forever, that is going to be a crazy environment for them. They're ready to pounce. Texas is ready to show everyone, like you said, Tyler, who they are. And the same thing goes for Quinn Ewers. Yes, he's been injured the past few weeks. Showed a lot of that rust early against Oklahoma. Was able to shake some of it off. You can't be rusty at all against a defense like Georgia. You just cannot do it. They will find a way to get after you. So I'm intrigued to see how all of the moving parts work in this game. Can Texas keep that run game going? If they can, that starts to put a little bit more pressure on Georgia. And they've already had some questionable moments on defense, as we've talked about in the past few weeks. This is really going to be more of an intriguing game than you'd think. If you think of if this game would have happened last year or 2 years ago, everyone's easily taking Georgia. But now, Texas is where they want to be. Like we've talked about, you've said it now, I've said it. This is the moment for Texas. And it appears we've lost you again.
Nope, I'm here.
Nope, there you
Thought
are.
you were just finishing on that point. Sorry.
But either way, this is one that, I've been going back and forth with it in my mind the entire day. And at the end of the day, I think with it being in Austin, with all that going on, I think Texas seizes the opportunity, and this is their statement win of the season. I think Texas gets the job done.
I agree. Just because they've got all the momentum, they've got all the moxie around them right now. I will say this will probably be, the game where you might see some of those weaknesses with Texas. The few that they'll have. You mentioned the secondary. How can they handle that? Barrage that Carson Beck has shown he could put up and mount. from that quarterback position sometimes. So I don't think it'll be necessarily the easiest win, but I do think Texas in the end is able to show, hey, we are that team, and they pull that home.
Absolutely. And then Texas has had a few things going against him. Isaiah Bond, we'll see if he plays or not. You've got a few defensive players dinged up. I know you've got a starter out that played against Oklahoma, got dinged up. He's out for this game. It'll be interesting to see how this one unfolds because we don't have too many giant games like this. We had Ohio State, Oregon last week. This one will be an absolute blast as well. But that's not the only battle between an orange UT and a red team in the SEC this week. Alabama and Tennessee. It is the third Saturday in October, so it's time to see the classic brawl almost, if you will. For the past however many years, Alabama has dominated this rivalry, and then Tennessee changed things 2 years ago. And now we're kind of starting to enter what I feel like could be that back and forth period between them now. Alabama, 3-point favorites on the road going into Knoxville in a game that Tyler, a few weeks ago, would have been, hype through the roof. But now this feels like a weird game because, again, you look at it, Alabama's been wishy-washy the past few weeks. Tennessee, they've been in that same boat. Both of these teams just trying to find momentum where they can. And it's just an odd feeling where you don't have confidence in either team, but someone's got to win. You know these are both teams that are good, have the ability to be great and downright elite. It's just who's going to show up.
Yeah, and we were talking about who needs to win more if you're Texas or Georgia, but I think in this game, both these teams desperately, desperately need this win, right? For the simple fact that you've been shaky the last couple weeks. So, whether it's Bama, whether it's Tennessee, they want to come out and establish, hey, you know what? We're fine. We're going to right the ship here with a big statement. And, I say that because both teams do have big games left. For Alabama, you still got Missouri, which has been a bit fraudulent. So maybe that's not as tough as it seems. But you got to go to LSU still right after that. And then for Tennessee, you still got to take on Georgia. So I think this is a must win for both squads, and that will play itself out. This will probably be a game where you may see some desperation, some different calls that you might not usually see out of a coach Heupel or a coach DeBoer just because they want to get this W.
Absolutely. And to me, this game comes down to one big mismatch, really, and that's Alabama. Their run defense, third worst in the SEC, giving up 129 yards on the ground. Tennessee, best rushing offense in the SEC, putting up 246 yards per game. That's mainly run the back of Dylan Sampson, who has just been an absolute monster this year. 15 touchdowns already on the season. If Tennessee can win that run game battle, if they can start to, be aggressive there, that really starts to open things up, I feel like, for Nico. And even though you've had some offensive line injuries for Tennessee, if you can get that consistency there, that offense should open up a little bit. Like we've mentioned, this Alabama defense, not what we really expected it to be this year. It's been shaky at times. They can force a lot of turnovers. That could be Tennessee's downfall. They've had several games with multiple turnovers now. But Alabama gives up a lot of big plays as well. It's going to be a really fun battle of who makes the bigger mistakes. Does Alabama make them or does Tennessee make them? If Alabama makes them, Tennessee wins. If Tennessee makes them, Alabama wins. It's one of those you can go back and forth with this game really all day. And I think the same thing can be said just about the two quarterbacks. The same thing there. It doesn't even, come down to the team. It comes down to how do these two battle it out against each other. Because we've seen Jalen Milroe make a ton of mental mistakes. He had the safety last week against South Carolina. You had the interception that gives them a field goal right before halftime. You've had a few just, almost turn your brain off for a second. What am I doing type of plays? But you also know the talent's there. We've all seen it. It's just what in the world are we going to actually get when these two get together?
Yeah, and I think you touched on probably the biggest key is how can Alabama, at least on paper, stop Dylan Sampson this running game? That's what's powered Tennessee through some of these awkward moments, right? The last couple weeks, whether it be against Oklahoma, whether it was last week, like that's been their big thing is they've at least been able to run the ball. So I just don't. I can't believe I'm saying this, Cade, but I don't know if Alabama is tough enough to deal with Tennessee's run game. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I lean on this, in that I think there are two ways this thing's going to go. This is going to be a low to mid scoring game, and Alabama's going to find a way to win, as Alabama usually does. They'll find some way to pull away eventually. Or Tennessee's going to turn this into a higher scoring game. They're going to get this into, maybe a 31-28, maybe 38-35 type of deal. Kind of something you really haven't seen from either squad have to fully be in, at least from the Tennessee side of things. Alabama's been in a few of these already, and Tennessee wins that type of game. I feel like if Tennessee can start to really get going offensively, the potential's going to be there. You're at home. You have every benefit at your advantage. If you can get that going, which I think will happen, I think Tennessee takes care of business. And that's really weird to say, and I didn't think I'd be saying it coming into the year, but I think Tennessee gets the job done at home. I think they win.
I'm glad you have joined in on the home underdog theory. I appreciate that. After last week, you've learned your lesson.
I
But
have.
here's where I pivot on you. I think this is where the experience of a Jalen Milroe will power Alabama. Yes, defensively they might struggle, but I envision this turning into a little bit more of a shootout than what people expect it to be. The over/under of this game is 56.5, so I could easily see this game wind up be a tick over that, where you got more of a 33-30 type of game at the end of the day. And I think Milroe pulls off some magic after a rough performance last week. I think he gets it done this week, and Alabama walks in and takes one from Tennessee.
All right. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree there. I feel like the higher the point total goes, the more it favors Tennessee. I feel like they are more equipped to win a shootout type of deal, but we'll have to see. Like we said, we don't play games on paper, we play them on a field. We'll have to see how everything shakes out. We've got to go to the big noon game, Tyler, because Nebraska and Indiana, the big noon game, Indiana 6-0, number 16 in the country. This is Kirk Cignetti's team. This is his squad that he's been saying, you get me to coach because I'm going to win. He literally said it earlier today. There was a story he was talking about with, how do you recruit the kids? Just Google me. I win. It's as simple as that. This is the moment for Indiana to take advantage of the spotlight that's been given to him. And Curtis Rourke, quarterback for Indiana, 14 touchdowns on the season through the air. He has been phenomenal to watch. Indiana, the second most efficient offense in the country. Indiana's a 6.5 point favorite. That line's been moving more and more towards them. And it feels weird to say, Tyler, that Nebraska, despite being 5-1, most years that would be a big enough story. Nebraska building back up, but they almost seem to be in the shadow of Indiana here.
Yeah, and that's weird to say, but you mentioned Curtis Work. I really got to watch him a lot at Ohio, um, and a guy that coming into the season, you felt like if he performed to what they expected him to be, that this was possible for Indiana. You weren't sure if it was going to get there, but you felt it was possible, and he's delivered everything you could ask so far and much more. So kudos to him on that. For Indiana, this is a game where it's not necessarily on a national stage to prove it, but this is the one where if you could take it, people start talking about you finally, right? They've kind of been in the shadow of everything else that's happened quietly, number 16 in the country. They don't really have that signature win on the season. So this is the chance to get that first. You still got a game against Ohio State to come, but this is the chance to show, hey, we are here and we should be taken seriously atop the Big Ten.
Absolutely. And Nebraska, a great defensive team. They've been able to lock people down this year. It's just, can they do it against Indiana's offense? And Tyler, I don't know if Nebraska will be able to do it. This is like I said, this is the big game for Indiana. I think that pressure to perform is there. Indiana's risen up to the challenge every single time so far this year. I like Indiana to get the job done, and the Hoosier train continues, and we get to 7-0 Indiana.
You know, had it not been for last week, I would have probably agreed with you here. But I think Nebraska, for what's worth, showed a lot of moxie in a very ugly game against Rutgers. That was a game exactly what Rutgers wanted. It's low scoring. They're keeping Nebraska's offense in check. They're shutting down Raiola, but yet Nebraska was able to find a way to win. I think this is the one that Matt Rule gets to finally show, okay, we are changing things around here. After that tough loss against Illinois at home, I think they get some skin back at the cost of Indiana, setting up an interesting matchup the next week as they travel to face Ohio State.
It'll
Give me
be
Nebraska.
it'll be fun. It should be a good old fashioned Big Ten game for a little bit. I do expect Nebraska to come out and they're going to try to make this an absolute slugfest. I just think Indiana, at some point late in the game, it's going to open up for them a little bit. Nebraska's not 100% there offensively. They're getting there, but I think Indiana just a little bit too much. And that brings us to... Oh.
Sorry, I was going to say, too, just with Indiana, the one thing that concerns me about them so far is that they haven't really been in the mud yet, Cade. Kind of were there against Maryland, right? Maybe touch and go. Not really against Northwestern. That's what concerns me. They haven't really been in the mud yet this year where they've come out and played what they felt like is a bad game. So Nebraska's done that, and they've been able to emerge. Mentioned Rutgers last week. They let that one slip against Illinois. So that's why I'm giving the edge slightly to Nebraska.
Okay. But we've got another Big Ten game to get to, though, Tyler. And you want to talk about what I think might be the rock fight of the week, if there is going to be one. Michigan and Illinois, middle of the day. Michigan is a 3-point favorite going on the road to Champaign. And this is going to be just an interesting game because Michigan, what's been the story with them all year? If you followed Michigan, even if you haven't followed Michigan, you figured it out by this point. They cannot throw the ball. They have struggled with the pass game the entire season. It's Mullings and Edwards all the way in the running game, and see what you can get there. That plays really well into Illinois' strength of being a solid defense that can you just air you out a little bit if they need to with Luke Altmaier. Not going to do anything too crazy, but a guy who's consistently solid, makes the right plays. But Illinois didn't do that last week. They gave up 49 to Purdue, a Purdue team that was able to sling it all over the field on them. Michigan's not going to have that same capability, you would think. But if Purdue can do it, maybe Michigan gets a little bit of a spark in the passing game. I think that's what Vegas is betting on here. Both of these teams, great with the run. It's just what in the world is going to happen for both of these defenses. This has the potential to be really ugly. I think Illinois got their random shootout out of their system already, so I'm intrigued to see how these two square up.
You know, and this is where I really disagree with Vegas on this. I don't understand how Illinois is a home underdog here because the one thing Purdue had last week, right, that Michigan we know doesn't have was a dynamic quarterback. Ryan Brown lit it up not only in the air but on the ground too, and the young redshirt freshman didn't know any better. So he was tough to defend. I don't think Michigan has that capability, and I think Illinois is tough enough to deal with their run game and keep them one-dimensional.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. I feel like Illinois is the more complete team
So
here than Michigan.
that's what. Also, by the way, yeah, and that's this is the game you also scratch your head and say, wait, these two teams are top 25. How did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it is weird to think about the more you look at this because Michigan, it feels like, should be unranked. Like, at least in my personal opinion, with how they had been playing, it feels like they should be an unranked team. And that would make things even weirder. I guess if you think about it, Illinois being ranked, Michigan wouldn't be ranked. But either way, I think this is Illinois' kind of step-up moment again to show that, hey, we could knock Michigan to a second conference loss and really keep our name in Big Ten title contention for now. That keeps you alive for, the playoff race that we're eventually going to get to. Remember, the first polls are in a few weeks for the playoffs, so that's going to be intriguing to see in and of its own right. But Illinois, I just like them a lot more. They're a solid team. They're a complete team. They can play complementary football. Michigan cannot do that. Give me Illinois to take care of business.
Amen. I'll double what you say.
And we've got one more to get to because Miami and Louisville, or Louisville, I should say, not Louisville. It is Louisville.
Put that hole in there. Put that hole in there.
Yeah, there you go. You got to get it correct. Miami, 4.5-point favorites in this one. And Louisville, I mean, last week you have the random game with Virginia, and this is a Louisville team that just, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, Tyler, just feels like they're starting to spiral these past few weeks. It's just loss, close win against an okay Virginia team, but it's just, you're staying competitive, and you finally got one last week to go your way. But playing Miami, it's an early game that usually helps the underdog a little bit. See, if it takes Miami a moment to get up for this one, it's a sellout crowd. It's a huge deal game. But can Louisville play up to Miami when you know how Miami's going to approach this? It's going to be like the last two games. Miami can bounce back no matter the situation. Be down 25, they found a way to win. Be in a weird back and forth game you had no expectation of being in against Virginia Tech, found a way to win. Cam Ward is that guy. He'll make a head-scratching play or two, and then he'll throw a beautiful ball. That's exactly what's going to happen in this one. It could be very intriguing and a weird game to start the day, and it could be a Miami blowout. There's no in-between with this Hurricane team.
Yeah, and I think the point you made about Louisville of the spiraling is probably the unfortunate part of this. And we touched on the last few weeks, right? Like those were big games for them to make their statement, and they fell short of doing it. And it seems like the team has kind of lost some of that confidence, some of that swag they had early in the season, just from looking on the outside, right? We're not in the locker room or anything, but they just don't have that same type of feel that they had early in the season where, they kind of realized maybe, okay, we have a chance to really do something. And, the Notre Dame loss is one thing, but then you drop that SMU game. And don't get me wrong, SMU's not a bad team. Not saying that. But you wanted to see more from this Louisville team. And now you look at it, I don't know if they have what it takes to fend off Miami in this. We've seen Miami pull crazy games out of their hat anyway. So even if you do get a favorable start and you find yourself in a good position for Louisville, Miami has shown the ability to fight back from that. So I think Miami here, the experience, for them going, hey, we got to get this to make sure that we're right there lockstep with what Clemson's doing. They've got that matchup coming up. So, yeah, give me Miami in this one.
And that's how I feel. I mean, what I've got here written on my notes is Miami dodges another bullet on the road. And there may not even be a bullet to dodge in this one, to be fair to Miami. Yeah. This might be one of those that it could be exciting for a half, but I think Miami pulls away in the third and fourth quarters, and the Canes get the job done to move on to 7-0. But Tyler, it is time for upset alert. The way this works, the three-tier system here, there is upset advisory, upset watch, and upset warning. Upset warnings are reserved for unless you feel really, really confident about it, or it's already in progress, which of course we can't call that in a prediction video, a game that's already in progress. That'd be a little weird. So the best I'm going to give you is an upset watch, but the first game we've got to start with is Oregon and Purdue. Now, if you're watching this, you're probably thinking, what are you talking about? Oregon is a 27.5 point favorite. Purdue is terrible. And you're mostly correct on that. However, I'm going to present a few things here. This is not a typical upset advisory. This is what we call a spoiler maker advisory. This is your welcome to the Big Ten moment, truly, Oregon. You thought it was Ohio State? It's actually Purdue on the road. Because this is why. Purdue is one of those teams that whenever they play a top 5 team, they are going to play unrealistically out of their mind. Just ask any other Big Ten member. They will gladly share their horror stories about playing a really solid Purdue team, especially Ohio State. This is a Friday night game. Friday night games have been weird this year. If you've noticed it, you played in one a few weeks ago against Michigan State, where it was a game you were the better team but didn't really put them away until the third quarter. This is an Oregon team that is coming off a giant win against Ohio State. Purdue has not had only an offensive coordinator change with the firing of Graham Harrell, but also the quarterback change. Ryan Brown starts slinging it last week, able to run it as well, like you mentioned, Tyler. Everything shows that Oregon should come into this game, in theory, and blow Purdue out. This thing's over by halftime and we go on. I'm not going to put this in an upset watch because there's a really good shot that happens. However, There is that possibility, and this has happened before and it will happen at some point again, that you catch Purdue on one of these weird days where they decide they're going to play like a top 3 team in the country. It is college football after all. Anything could happen any given Saturday, and Oregon has to be ready for it. Because if they aren't, oh boy, are we going to have a big story when we come back to do a video next week.
Yeah, and this is that game too where you really figure out, is Oregon built for the long haul? I think. What do they show in this game? As long as they win, that's the thing. If it's close, that's fine. If it's overtime, maybe you worry a little bit, right? But if they're able to pull it out, and just get it done, that's fine. But yeah, all the ingredients are coming together for a classic, as you mentioned, a spoiler maker performance here, where downtrodden, down and out. I mean, they've got nothing else to play for. This might as well be their Super Bowl, trying to just pull this off. And it's still early enough in the season where, as a coach, you're telling your guys, hey, this could really turn around our season, fellas, if you go get it done here. I mean, think about it. This was a team that got just absolutely mauled by Notre Dame in their second game of the year. 66 put on them by Notre Dame. 52 put them on by Wisconsin, an average Wisconsin team. And shoot, they gave up 50 last week. So they're going to try to dig down the dirt and say, all right, Oregon's going to come in here, take us lightly, not take this serious, and we're going to show them why that might be a mistake. Obviously, I think the correct assumption of this game is, yeah, Oregon comes in here, probably lays us around for maybe a half and then picks it up. But be on the watch for this one.
Absolutely. And I'm intrigued to see how Oregon approaches it. Once again, it's going to feel weird to say that until the game actually gets going. But Oregon has to come out and play aggressive. It's like you would on any other road game. And I think Dan Lanning will have Oregon prepared. It's also, will Dylan Gabriel have a bad game? Usually, after he has a really good game, he tends to play pretty good. He doesn't have a weird drop off, but he's had some moments. And Tyler, I know we've seen them the past few years, where he has some head scratching plays. And if you have one or two of those at the wrong time in a place like this, things can get weird really, really quick. But we will have to see how that one goes. But we've got another upset game to get to, and that is LSU and Arkansas. This one is an upset watch for me. LSU, 2.5-point favorite. Number one, it's a rivalry game. You battle for the Golden Boot, which, by the way, great rivalry trophy. If you've never seen it, it's literally the state of Arkansas on top of the state of Louisiana, and it creates a nice boot. It is perfectly done. And then LSU riding high off the big win over Ole Miss, the overtime win. Arkansas's a tough opponent this year. They've already proven that. They had the big win over Tennessee. They were able to hang with Oklahoma State in a weird game where everything seemed to go against Arkansas turnover-wise, but they moved the ball down the field. Arkansas, not a bad opponent this year, to say the absolute least. It's a rivalry game that I think is one of those weirder ones, Tyler. And if you're an LSU or Arkansas fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Kind of like we mentioned with Florida and Tennessee last week. It doesn't matter what actually the records are or the rankings. You know something squirrely is going to happen in this game. And there's a very good chance that Arkansas does that, being at home especially. This could be that wacky upset of the week. It has that feeling to it. We'll just have to see what goes down in Fayetteville.
Yeah, this is an Arkansas team that right now is seeing some pathways to say, hey, we get ourselves right back in the picture. I mean, they've still got, on top of this LSU game, they still got Ole Miss, Texas coming to them in November. And that's November 2nd, then a bye week in Texas. So they are very much, telling themselves, hey, we're right here. A couple teams slip up, we control our destiny, pretty much. So the only one that they can't get back is that loss against Texas A&M. But otherwise, the teams in front of them are teams that they have, right? So that makes for a dangerous Arkansas team, knowing that everything that you want is still very, very much a chance to be accomplished. And a team that early in the season kind of felt like maybe they got written off, Cade, and now they're on the comeback. So if you're Brian Kelly, you better take this one very seriously. You've got to bring your A-plus game. Can't slop around to this, because Arkansas has already proved that if you do that to them, they'll take advantage of it pretty quick.
Absolutely. And LSU, they still have some problems in the secondary. They fixed a decent amount of that against Ole Miss. You got to continue to get better at that. LSU's still trying to get that running game. Garrett Nussmeier, can he continue to build on those clutch drives he had last Saturday? He has a lot to continue to build on. LSU as a team has a lot to continue to build on. And Arkansas is the perfect team to just absolutely wreck any progress that you've made. We've seen that time and time again.
And physicality wise, I really want to see if LSU could match it because they're going to have to be super physical on the road here. Arkansas has had no problem doing that so far this season against many opponents of just coming out, hey, we're going to try to punch you in the mouth and see if you can handle it. Some have, some haven't. So we'll see how LSU handles that challenge.
Absolutely. And going to make a prediction, obviously, later on for the other games of interest for the week. But one final game to look at, Notre Dame in a neutral site with the heaviest quotation marks you could ever put on neutral site, playing Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Now, it's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's not at Bobby Dodd, so it's 2 miles away from where it usually would be played. But this is a Georgia Tech team that's an 11-point underdog in this game. Georgia Tech's 5-2. Remember, they're still not bad. It seems like everyone forgot about Georgia Tech because they beat Florida State, and Florida State just turned out to be bad. Then Georgia Tech lost to Syracuse. They lost to Louisville. They had their bye week. They started to fade off into obscurity from the rest of the college football world. But in the last 2 weeks, it has been Jamal Haynes having his best 2 performances of the season, running for over 170 against North Carolina. Georgia Tech's been clutching it out in the fourth quarter against both Duke and UNC. The Jackets have some confidence going into this one. And Brent Key, I mean, he is an amazing coach. I mean, he is a fun guy to play for. He's one of those, loyal to Georgia Tech. If you've heard me talk about guys that, are coaching at their alma mater, that really does seem to mean a little bit more to them. They want to go out and put everything on the line for their school because that's what they've always been doing. That's what they've been doing since they were a kid. Now they get to do it again as an adult and preach it into these same young guys. Georgia Tech will be pumped for this game. The only problem I see for Georgia Tech is Notre Dame might finally be starting to hit their stride. They absolutely blow out Stanford, which you're supposed to do. Coming off a bye week, Notre Dame had the big win over Louisville before that. Notre Dame is starting to get into form. Georgia Tech looks like they're getting there too. This is a perfect game to put the upset watch label on.
Yeah, the only problem I have with this one is I just looking at it on paper, you mentioned Georgia Tech starting to come around. The defenses they played were not very good last couple games, right? I mean, UNC, I've seen high school defenses defend better, and I'm talking low class high school. I mean, goodness. And it's great for confidence building, but when things get tough all of a sudden against a really sound Notre Dame team, that's what kind of worries me about Georgia Tech in this one. That being said, you mentioned Britt Key. You got to love what this man's doing right now. At the very least, he's taking a group of players that a lot of people didn't have high expectations of coming into the season, and he's getting the most out of them. So for that factor alone, I could definitely see where if momentum starts swinging Georgia Tech's way early, they could really be in this game, and it's a home quote unquote neutral site game, as you pointed out. I don't know who let Notre Dame talk themselves into this one, but dandy set up for them. I could see where possibility of Georgia Tech being able to hang around and find a way to scare Notre Dame at the very least.
Yeah, and I think that's where this one's leaning more towards. We'll talk about it more, of course, when we do the actual predictions on it. But if Georgia Tech can find a way to cover, that's still not a bad thing here. I mean, going toe-to-toe with Notre Dame would still be an accomplishment for them, as much as you hate to say that. You want to win any game you're playing in, obviously. But Georgia Tech, like you mentioned on the offensive side of things, just building confidence. That does go a long way for a game like this. Even though North Carolina is abysmal when it comes to defense, being able to have that game before and to say, okay, we are a little bit better on offense than we think they are. Sometimes it's more of a mindset than you really need going into a game like this.
Yeah, especially at this level. I mean, we see it all the time. Look at, we're Oklahoma fans. Look at Jackson Arnold in his situation. I don't think anybody would dispute that he's got talent, but there's clearly a mental thing there right now that's preventing him from achieve his highest level.
Absolutely.
So confidence for a young athlete, man, it can make all the difference.
It absolutely can. So, Tyler, it is finally time to get to the games of interest segment, the final part here, going through some of these games that we talked about a little bit earlier on the upset watch advisory warning system a little bit. Going back to Oregon and Purdue, as much fun as it would be to see Purdue pull off the upset, it's more than likely not going to happen. Purdue might cover at best. Oregon is just a incredibly sound football team. And when you're a sound football team that's playing great ball, upsets like this aren't going to happen. It's wish casting. It's not going to happen. I think Oregon comes in here. They may not cover, but they'll take care of business.
Cade, give me Purdue to cover.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I think they cover. That's probably as good as you're going to get. Maybe they keep it interesting for the first half and then it just kind of slips away. Maybe there's some late game heroics, that get them a little closer than what it appeared. But I could see Oregon not necessarily sleepwalking, but I could see them easily navigating through this, maybe not having their best game. A little bit of that hangover, but still plenty to get past Purdue.
Absolutely. I've seen some Oregon fans, I'll just kind of address this here because there's really no other place to put it. Some of them upset that it's another Friday game for them. And I get that there. You get a Friday game after playing Ohio State and before. And this is where that schedule kind of screws you a little bit because you don't get that extra day of rest because that's a hard-fought game. I mean, that is a ridiculous game that you need some time almost to recover from. Even though you're college-age kids in the most fit shape of your life, you still need a breather, it feels like, after a game like that. And going to Purdue, in theory, should be a break for them, but everyone knows how Purdue is. They're not a team you want to play when you're highly ranked. So we'll see how Oregon adjusts to that one. The next game.
Hey, welcome to the Big Ten, man. You wanted the money, you wanted the fame. That's what you get, part of it.
Absolutely. But the next one to get to, another one we've already talked about a little bit, LSU and Arkansas. I think you made a good point with it, Tyler. Will Arkansas's physicality show up? They're at home. More than likely, it'd be weird if it didn't. Will LSU match that physicality? That's an entirely different question. LSU's not built to be super physical. They're not a great team when it comes to running the ball. They have the ability to air it out. Garrett Nussmeier, like I've already said, can he continue to build on those clutch drives? I think LSU does. I think LSU's passing attack gets going here. Arkansas will find a way to ground them at times, but in a rivalry that has so many odd moments, I could see LSU pulling it out late again where Tennessee couldn't here in Fayetteville. I like LSU to hold on for dear life in Fayetteville.
Oh, Cade. When do we learn?
Never.
When do we learn? This is the classic Brian Kelly lose situation. Come off that great win against Ole Miss. Everybody's talking you up. And this is where Brian Kelly meets the disappointment of his perceived high ceiling as a coach.
Well, see,
I think Arkansas comes out, punches them in the mouth a bit. LSU doesn't like that. Maybe they fight back, but I could see this a spot where Arkansas controls this game and in a way where the score might seem close, but at the end of the day, you look at it and go, yeah, Arkansas really did kind of have this one all the way. I'm feeling
You're feeling
the Razorbacks.
You're feeling Arkansas. See, I feel like this could be the classic Arkansas letdown game, though, where you've had a bye week to celebrate Tennessee, but you still come out a little bit overconfident. Maybe LSU hits you with a deep pass down the field to start the game, and you're starting to think, okay, what are we actually in for? You start to get some of that physicality going, try to establish the run a bit, and LSU's just able to have enough confidence early that Arkansas, when they try to make a late rally, it's just not enough, and LSU hits them over the top. That's where I see this one going. I think Arkansas and LSU in a battle of two teams that are riding big highs. I think LSU keeps it just a little bit more. And then the next one that we've already talked about, just a tit, but Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. Notre Dame's 11-point favorites in this one. I like Georgia Tech to find a way maybe to cover. I could see it. It'll depend on if that line moves a little bit more between now and when between when this video goes up and Saturday. But I think Notre Dame takes care of business. I think they're starting to finally hit that stride. Georgia Tech will throw everything at them. They'll make this a ball game, absolutely. But I just like Notre Dame to hold on.
Yeah, I think this is where, Notre Dame's kind of cool confidence they've been showing. It really comes through here. We've seen them get into some tough situations. They've rebounded well out of that Northern Illinois loss, and I think that continues. They're kind of on the rise, as you've been mentioning, and starting to maybe reach, a spot where they feel pretty confident about themselves, and this would just be another stepping stone on the path to saying, okay, we're where we need to be toward
Absolutely. And this is
the
one
end of the
where,
season trying to play best ball. Obviously, they're playing for a good.
well, no, you go ahead. You cut out for a second, so you're back now. But
You got to pick me up. I got you. But yeah, no, I mean, I just think this is a good stepping stone for Notre Dame. Say, all right, tough environment, go get it done, take care of business, and just continue that march to putting themselves into the playoff conversation solidly.
absolutely. And the first one to get to on the games of interest that we've not already briefly touched on, it's Kansas State and West Virginia. Now, once again, Saturday night in Morgantown, not a fun place to play at. We mentioned that last week when Iowa State came to West Virginia. K-State 3-point favorites on the road, but I think I'm going to basically repeat what I said last week for Kansas State. They found a way to win now on the road, to twist it a little bit, instead of having to find a way and get that experience like they did at BYU. Now that you've shown you can do it, you build on it here and do it again. West Virginia battled with Iowa State for 3 quarters, couldn't get the job done. You're playing a Kansas State team that can be just as physical at times. I think Kansas State able to come in here. It'll still be a battle for sure. West Virginia will have their moments, but I think Kansas State comes in, takes care of business at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think this is a game that plays out as a, Kansas State seeing what Iowa State did last week and said anything you could do, I can do better. And a little bit of one-upsmanship. They come out, take control of the game early, and really don't leave it, as a game of concern in any respect. So just because, I, for whatever reason, West Virginia just seemingly does not have the gas this year. Disappointed. I was high on them in the preseason of what they could be, but they just clearly do not have it to compete with some of these more physical teams.
And the final game to get to, it's a Tiger Bowl. Auburn and Missouri. Missouri 4.5 point favorites in this one, but if you look at it, they opened as a 7 point favorite, Tyler. The money's starting to go Auburn's way. Yes, Auburn's 2-4, but I think everyone's kind of cracked the code on them. If they can stop turning the ball over, they can be a decent team. They're not a bad offense. They're just a turnover-prone offense that makes you think they're really bad when they're okay, sometimes good. But Missouri, I mean, you want to talk about bouncing back? You were able to do it. You know why? You were playing UMass. That's the main reason why. 45-3 going on the road there. But this is that real moment. Can Mizzou show everyone, okay, that was a one-off at A&M. We got just absolutely manhandled down there in College Station. Can they come back and prove that they are still a threat in the SEC?
Yeah, they definitely need it, and the good news for them is they avoided what's seen for a moment like a huge injury with Luther Burden. Reports were that, he's going to be fine this week for the most part, so that's big. And you wouldn't look at this game on paper and think, well, this is a must win for Missouri. But for all the reasons you pointed out, kind of got to be a statement one, right? It's got to be one of those where they really put it on Auburn and, let everybody know, okay, hey, we're on the comeback. We're riding the ship after that beatdown.
Yeah, and this is going to be one where expect Auburn to play well. I think Auburn is finally getting into that stretch where they're going to show you what they really are. Unfortunately for them, I still don't think that's going to be enough. Missouri being at home gets the job done. If this was at Auburn, I think I'd be more inclined to call this maybe the upset of the day. It would be an upset watch type of game. But being in Columbia, I like Missouri to hold on. Like you said, Luther Burden, not a major injury. I think he comes back, has another big day. Missouri's offense gets back on track somewhat, and that's enough to get the job done.
Well, and here, Kate, I want to ask you this too, because I'm intrigued by your take there. You think this is going to play a little closer? Is that going to really sit well with the people nationally to think, oh, hey, he still struggled against Auburn because, you made the points that, well, Auburn's, starting to round into a bit of a better form, but you don't think of that when you see a 2-4 record, right? And
Exactly.
so is this a situation where if Missouri doesn't come out and just establish total dominance, that they're going to really be kind of a heavy underdog against Bama next week? Is that what we're looking at, maybe?
I
I'm
think
intrigued by that.
I think the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to split it down the middle here. I think this is going to be one where the national media is going to look at it and say, "Wow, Missouri only beat Auburn by maybe 7. Missouri's terrible. What are you doing? It's Auburn. You should beat Auburn by more than that. They're 2-5." But I think Missouri people are going to look at it and say, "Hey, listen, we won. That's all we needed to do. We got to win. We're still in the SEC title race. We've got to prove ourselves against Bama, obviously. We're okay being the underdog in that game. That's who we've always been as a program." When is that ever going to change for Missouri? They just need to win. They're at that point where your objective is not about style points. You lost that a long time ago with the double overtime Vandy game, which that win looks better every single week. Vanderbilt should beat Ball State. They'll be a 5-2 team. Boston College, not a bad team, but it's the way they've been winning has been ugly. That's just how this team is going to be this year. I think if you're a Missouri fan, you just want to see a win. If you're national media, you're going to want to see Missouri put up some points. You're going to want to see them be able to coast a victory. And coast can be kind of loosely defined here, just double digits, I guess. But I think that's where you're going to see some of that disconnect. But I think Missouri gets a win. Fan base stays happy. You're 6-1. You're still in the hunt. But that will do it for this week, the Week 8 college football preview. Tyler, I mentioned it earlier, it's going to be a fun week. We've got the 2 big games in Austin and Knoxville. It's going to be an absolute great week of football. But folks, as always, like I said at the beginning of the video, feel free to, 1, like the video, number 2, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment down below if you want to. Let us know how your team's doing, or what you agree with, what you disagree with, all those great things there. And of course, as always, most people who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, and we're trying to get to 100 subscribers by December, around Christmas time. I think that'd be a fun goal to try to hit. So any way you could help out, tell your friends, tell your family, tell some random person on the street. We don't care who you tell them to. If that helps, we appreciate it. We really do, sincerely. I'm not saying that just as a joke here. It really does mean a lot to us. It really does to continue
It does.
to see the channel
Even if
grow.
it's to tell that person on the street, hey, these guys suck. You should listen to how bad they are. That's fine. We'll take anything. Those comments, folks, we're serious. I mean, we shout out one the other day on the
We
recap,
did.
right? So, I mean, you throw in a comment, hey, throw in that opinion. We could talk about it on the recap the following week. So that's good. Get that conversation going. We love good conversation.
Absolutely. But folks, until next time, have a good one, everybody.